Samina and Letisa, two outstanding progressives in the state of Illinois, and I can't wait to hear what they have to say about the debate, the state of the Democratic Party, the state of the election, what's the best way to beat Donald John Trump, and all other things that may fall in their mind, including I may ask Letisa Wallace what she thinks about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And by the way, and don't get Samina Mustafa talking about Dave Chappelle. All right. Well, I may ask her.
I was going to say, you're going to do that, aren't you? You're going to get her talking
about Dave Chappelle. Samina's got some interesting things to say about Dave Chappelle. Anyway, that's not for another 3 hours or so. But so before we do that, the young man from Alton, Illinois, the one they call the doctor with the news.
You're the only one who calls me that. How's it going, everybody? I'm Dennis. We're on YouTube now, by the way, guys. Sorry about that. We're now live on YouTube. My bad. Been a little busy today. Some pre-show
prep.
Pre-show prep. Been doing some pre-show prep.
Yes, sir.
All right, it's the middle of the final day of the week. Let's talk about what's going on in Illinois and or Chicago this afternoon, all right? We're not just going to be debate heavy, all right? We do local news, and we're going to stick to that. And holy crap, what about that performance from Mayor Rahm last night at the ABC debates? We're going to get to that in a moment, but first, all right? But first.
Oh, thank you, ABC.
I was watching the debates, and he showed up on TV. Like, what a gift that the world has given us. More God. Mayor Rahm content.
Just what we need, more Mayor Rahm.
That's awesome.
What a character.
All right, but no public events scheduled for our Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker today, nor Lori Lightfoot.
Yeah, well, resting up from the debates, okay?
J.B. Pritzker's at home taking care of that femur. But Mr. Pritzker, it's all good, Captain. In fact, you can go ahead and jump out of the cockpit and kick that leg up in the back because your Democratic colleagues are at the yoke. That's what you call a wheel of a plane, a yoke. Did you know that?
I did not know that. Did you learn that at radio school?
I've doing that in a while, actually.
Okay.
But your Democratic colleagues are at the yoke, and they are indeed flying high. Now, in case you didn't know, recreational marijuana, or cannabis, will be legal in the state of Illinois in the near future, January 1st, 2020. And while people like me are only thinking about how much money I'm going to lose and then all this legal
right.
weed, there's some Illinois executives out there foaming at the mouth thinking about all the money that they can make.
I know.
The following comes from the Illinois Politico people there, and one Shia Kapos. The Executives Club of Chicago held a panel discussion on Thursday to talk about pot. And according to Illinois Politico, subscribe to Illinois Politico, by the way, it's a great source for local news. According to Illinois Politico, about 175 people showed up to the discussion. Industry panelists and attendees included Wanda James, the first African-American woman to own a marijuana dispensary in Colorado. Stormy Simon, badass name right there, Stormy Simon, who sits on the board of High Times.
One of your favorite publications.
Yeah, get it every month. Grassroots CEO Mitch Kahn, and of course, present at the panel discussion, Illinois State Rep, badass and dear friend of the Ben Joravsky Show, one Kelly Cassidy.
Casey.
Discussion points included jobs, racial equality, restorative justice, and the slow process to get the cannabis industry up and running at full speed. Mitch Kahn predicted it would take 2 years, but Cassidy said 5 years. And here's why we love Kelly Cassidy. Cassidy said, quote, "Takes time for people to break up with their weed guy."
Did Kelly really say that?
Yeah.
Oh, she's funny, man. She's off the reservation. She does whatever she wants these days.
I get why that's funny, but I've been concerned about this issue.
I know you have.
Ever since this whole thing's been going down. So, Ben, if I could take a moment to directly talk with my weed dealer.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Take that opportunity.
He's a big listener. He loves the show. Hey, weed man. Listen, I want you to know, I'm not going anywhere. To hell with this law. What we have is more special than some bill. I don't mind going to the ATM, and hey, I enjoy our 45-second conversations in your car. Kind of awkward, but I like it.
Does he come right up to the door?
I just go in his car.
Oh, I see.
It's you and me until the end, good sir. See you next week.
I'm sure he appreciates that. But, listen, I've been advocating the legalization of marijuana for many, many, many years. And basically because the law was unfairly used so that black people got arrested and white people got to smoke their reefer. So I thought that was really unfair and contradictory and hypocritical, et cetera, et cetera. Now it's legal. And, I can't say I really like what's going on, D. You know what I'm saying? It's so clearly, obviously, taken over by corporate America, and so they're going to be making lots of money. And little guys, like your pal Reefer Man, or whatever his name is.
Don't say his name.
I don't know his name, so I can't say his name. Billy Bob, whatever his name is, are getting put out of business. So I kind of feel sorry for those guys. They're entrepreneurs. They're hustlers, What's that dude's name down in St. Louis area that made the cookies?
Yeah.
Remember him?
He was the cookie man.
Cookie man. And then
sold weed cookies.
And then there's that other guy whose name I won't use, but you and I both know him. I affectionately refer to him as Big Boy. You know who I'm talking about. Oppo, that guy. I wonder how he's going to do in this new age. So, yeah, there was a lot of small-time weed dealers and, small-time entrepreneurs, and they're going to get kicked out of business, and corporate America's taken over. I don't know if that's progress, D, but at least it's better than locking up black people for something that white people do every day.
Kelly Cassidy then commented and gave an even cooler quote. Remember, it's Kelly Cassidy and Senator Heather Staines who have been putting in the hard work on this, and they've been given the nickname throughout the year, the Marijuana Moms. Okay. All right? Yeah. Kelly Cassidy said, quote, "We were dubbed the Marijuana Moms, but we're so much more," she said, adding that they instead should be called, and Ben, please do not get comfortable saying this, the Canna-Bitches.
Casey said that?
Casey said
man,
that.
Casey's on a roll.
Why would I make that up?
Yeah, no, Kelly Cassidy, man. She's one of a kind. And she, what did they sometimes call her? Wonder Woman? Remember the headline, Wonder Woman? Kelly Cassidy was a relatively obscure North Side legislator, state representative from the Rogers Park, Edgewater area. And in the last couple of years or so, she took the lead on the effort to legalize reefer. And as such, she's become one of the most popular politicians in the state of Illinois. So, you know what, Dee, I'd like to say this. We here at the Ben Joravsky Show were big fans of Kelly Cassidy long before it was fashionable.
And weed.
Well, yeah, we've been since 1970s for me.
Speaking of, my weed man just got back to me.
Oh, hold on.
Let me read what he said.
Yeah.
I love you, man.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, it's like how funny all the people now who openly smoking weed were doing it subvertly, back in the 2008. They wouldn't even talk about it. Ben, don't ask me any questions about marijuana, okay? That's off. It's like a Kim Fox interview, right, D? You get some people come in the studio. Ben, no questions about Kim Fox. Well, back in the day, it was Ben, no questions about legalizing marijuana. All right, everybody, it's safe. You can come out of hiding now.
All right, so that's what's going on statewide. Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about this debate. Mainly, let's talk about former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel's appearance on this. He's for sure working for ABC. That's for sure.
Yes, he is.
I thought it was just like an appearance last Sunday, but no, he's got the gig and he's on there.
Wait, tell me, I didn't see him. Did you actually see him? I just heard his voice
last night.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was all over.
Was he wearing a ABC blazer?
No, not yet.
Remember the old days? This is way before your time. ABC used to do. No,
remember this? You won't, but do you remember?
Monday Night TV. Monday night football on ABC TV. Howard Cosell, speaking of sports, they used to wear blazers. Remember that, D? Mm-hmm. In your time, did they still?
I remember the blazers.
Okay, so did Rahm wear a blazer?
No.
They didn't give him a blazer?
No.
Rahm should be, hey, Rahm, come on, get your brother on the phone. Hey, I want a blazer, just like Howard Cosell, all right?
All right, enough of Blazergate. We got clips to play here. First, we're going to play Rahm's highlights from the debate pre-show. Okay, he was featured in the with the panel.
Pre-show.
I know you missed it. I'm glad you missed it because this is
we were in
the
train
great.
Coming home on the pre-show. Remember that, D?
Yeah. So we learned one thing from Rahm's appearance last night. He's for sure ABC's Biden go-to guy.
Okay.
He's their guy for Biden.
All right.
So let's go ahead and here's ABC's Tom Yamas with kind of a gross question to Rahm, if you ask me. If he were in Joe Biden's ear,
well, I think it's metaphorically, but whatever.
What would he say?
I want to start with Rahm Emanuel, the former mayor of Chicago, chief of staff to President Obama, and someone who knows Vice President Biden very well. If you're in his ear tonight, what are you telling him?
Yeah, energy, passion. And you got to come alive in that area and be also light about it in the sense that you're going to be between Bernie and you're going to be between Elizabeth. They're going to tag team you. And if you can show that it doesn't get to you, that will be as much as anything. But remember, this is 3 hours. You have to have that energy and that impact all 3 hours, not the first two. So that would be it.
Oh, wow. There you go. Energy, high energy. I think Joe was taking his advice, particularly at the end of the debate when he went on that great riff and started talking about record players. Yeah, that's pretty conventional wisdom. And it look energetic, even if nobody knows what you're talking about. That did well for Rahm, by the way. Rahm, remember in the old days when Rahm would start talking about city finances and start babbling on about how he was able to bring down the deficit with all his swaps and his corporate deals on lending, and nobody knew what he was talking about. But that sounds good, so let's move on. So taking advice from Rahm Emanuel, Joe Biden was more energetic. Thank you, Rahm.
Up next in his rebuttal to ABC's Yvette Simpson, Rahm reminded us of two things. One, he's not a progressive. And two, he's smart. You're not.
You know, I think progressives are really where the energy is right now. And I think if you can expand the electorate, which is what we saw in '08, bringing out new voters, particularly brown and black voters, young voters, energize the base where you don't have to change your message much, right? Just go out and get those voters excited. We can win.
But hold on, Ron, I saw you shaking your head real quick. What's the rebuttal here?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump is going to do a great job turning out our vote. And in '08, as well as in '92, '96, and in '12, is because both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama brought other people, not just people in the party, other people to the party.
Yeah, Yvette.
Yeah. You know, it's so funny. Rahm wants Joe Biden more energetic, but he doesn't want Democratic voters energetic, okay? So he's banking on Democratic voters. This is classic Rahm Clinton strategy that they've been employing since the 1992 presidential election. They're banking on Democratic voters just showing up despite whatever the Democratic candidate is espousing, regardless of whether the Democratic candidate is speaking to what people really need or not. It's just like, you're going to vote for this Democrat because you have no choice, because the Republican is far worse, and then you're going to elect someone who's going to sell out your interests as soon as they're elected president. And it doesn't matter whether you're screwed over in the long run, because we will be victorious. That is the Rahm Clinton strategy. It goes back to '92, and it didn't really work. It only worked in '92 because Ross Perot was on the ballot, but they never, and he was on the ballot in '96 as well, which guaranteed Bill Clinton's victory. So this is the Rahm strategy. He's sticking with this strategy. And frankly, it didn't work in 2016. You remember that? Donald Trump was on that ticket as well, and he was energizing Democratic voters who hated him and were afraid of him. And guess what? Donald Trump's the president of the United States. Somehow or other, the Rahm Emanuels and Bill Clintons of the world have taken a look at the 2016 election and decided to do the same thing.
Up next, yep, he's the Biden guy.
Rahm, Vice President Joe Biden made one of his final moves before the debate starts to show a video of him basically bear hugging President Obama. Smart move. Why is he doing that?
I think he also got a hug back.
Yeah, he did.
Okay. But no, yeah, it's a smart move. It's his calling card. It's why he has the strength he has among Democratic voters, is because he served with a very, very popular president. It's what surprised me in the last debate when people were throwing the president under the bus. I mean, you have a person who's at 90-some-odd% popularity with Democrats. That is not a smart strategy. I do agree with Matt. This is going to be about the energy. There's more about a chemistry that you're going to associate, and the closer the candidate can put their own story with the story of where people live their lives, the better they're going to be. They're not going to follow all the details about this policy versus that policy. It's about relating, and they feeling that they can relate to that candidate and that they understand them where they live their lives.
Okay, Rahm, it's very important, folks, that you don't pay attention to the specifics of any of their policies, because if you do pay attention to the specifics of the policies, you're probably against them. Like, you're pretty much against every policy that Rahm drafted when he was mayor of the city of Chicago. I love it. One more time, be energetic. That's his advice to Joe Biden, but don't be energetic. That's his advice to the Democratic base. So any Democratic candidate takes advice from Rahm Emanuel. By the way, I also point out that Joe Biden was not the only beneficiary of his ties to Barack Obama. One thing Rahm does know, that Barack Obama can deliver an election. Rahm Emanuel was largely elected in 2011 because he was Barack Obama's chief of staff, and he was largely reelected in 2015 because Barack Obama decided to do those commercials for him. If you recall, he did those TV commercials and radio commercials extolling the virtues of Rahm Emanuel, and that apparently was enough for people in the city of Chicago to reelect Rahm. And then, what was it, by 3 or 4 months later, they had this gasping moment of realization when the Laquan McDonald story broke. Like, oh my God, what have I done? And ever since then, he's been persona non grata in the city of Chicago. So it's interesting that Rahm would be advised. It's actually, I can understand why Rahm would be advising Joe Biden to cling himself to Barack Obama, because it's worked well for him.
Our next clip, Ben, you're going to love this one.
The secret to being a good debater is devotion to the truth. Not winning the argument, but telling the truth, and I think that's what I've heard from voters.
And if you can't do that, fake it.
Or that. Fake it till
No,
you make
there is. Listen, I mean, President Clinton got the kid from Hope, and his story was relatable to where people were living their lives.
God. The kid from Hope. One more time. The kid from Hope would not have won in 1992 if the kid from Texas, Ross Perot, wasn't on the ticket. You know that, Roms.
I just like, or fake it. Like,
Or
did you know
fake
people
it.
in Chicago are watching this?
Yeah, I know. Or fake it. Remember when Ron would get sincere about stuff? Nobody believed him. You know what I'm saying? The reporters didn't believe, but reporters couldn't say it, as we've talked about many times. Rummana Hussain's in the studio. She knows what I'm talking about. You can't really say it, but nobody believed Ron when he would get try to get those tears out, be squeezing out a tear. Remember Rom in the old days, Rummana squeezing out a tear. I can get this tear. Come on, tear, you can do it. Crocodile tears, Rom. So fake it. Absolutely. Great advice from Rahm Emanuel.
We have a few more clips to play here, and a little later on, I'll play the one of him calling Castro mean.
Oh, yeah, because Castro went after Joe Biden, who's Rahm's candidate. That's pretty clear.
So the debate ended, and Ben, how's Rahm doing so far in his job here at the debate?
I think he's doing great. Great
Really?
job, Rahm. Great
Wow.
advice. Fake it. There you go.
I didn't think you were going to say that.
Oh, come on. He's great.
All right,
Great material for the Ben Joravsky show.
Now, the Cory Booker moment. All right.
Here we go. I
Holy
love this
crap,
moment.
this is priceless, this moment here. So Cory Booker went to hug, what's her name, Heidi Heitkamp? Or?
Heidi Heitkamp,
Heitkamp?
the former senator from North Dakota.
Cory Booker went to hug her after the post-show talk here. And then Cory Booker, for some reason, threw this little jab out. Uh-oh, 1 second. Let me play it again here.
Senator Booker, how you doing?
No hugs for the mayor, for Rahm Emanuel. No hugs for Rahm.
Nothing. Matt Dowd, no love either. It's okay, Matt.
I should have gotten a hug. That was an oversight. Take a handshake.
Rom's reaction.
Senator Booker,
I'm okay without a hug.
You got a hug?
Yeah, that's fine by me.
Give him that mayoral solidarity.
You were the one that said it, so that's fine.
Okay.
Oh, my God. Nervous laughter from Rahm because it's pretty apparent. No hug for Rahm Emanuel. Even Cory Booker doesn't want to go anywhere near him. You get a picture of Cory Booker hugging Rahm. There goes whatever support he had out the window. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, Rahm didn't comment this on a post-debate. I don't recall him commenting. Maybe he did. But Laquan McDonald's name was uttered in the debate last night. I can't remember who was the one who said it. It was talking about all the violations of justice that have occurred over the last few years, and Laquan McDonald, I think, was the first name uttered. So, there was it was a perfect moment for Rahm to weigh in on that.
Could be wrong, but I think it was Beto who said that.
Was Beto mentioned Laquan McDonald?
I believe so.
I can't remember who, but I remember sitting up and going, oh, my goodness, and was really eagerly waiting Rahm's reaction, but, of course, he neglected to talk about that while talking about the need to fake it in presidential debates. Great advice from Rahm Emanuel.
All right, we heard Ben Joravsky's winners and losers. What about Mayor Rahm's? Let's compare and see if they...
Rahm Emanuel, winners and losers tonight, if any.
Well, there is a lot of people got a chance to advance their campaign. I actually, if you look at the whole field, I think that Vice President Biden did, Senator Warren did. I do think that Mayor Pete, Amy, Senator Klobuchar, and Senator Harris all got a chance to advance their campaign. They had moments that will be taken away. I think the biggest loser in this is obviously former Secretary Castro, that I think had a moment that he actually went tougher and meaner, and it had a streak that is not going to work for him. I do think this. I think the party, I would say the first two debates, the party did not do well. I actually think the party this time as a whole, we showed the slew of candidates collectively, you walk away, the gestalt, the moment, the party actually is a little more in a better position. What worried me, we were talking about this earlier in the Pew poll, that Democrats were, ever since the presidential debate started having a negative impression. Now they're, I think, going to start to rebound.
Wow, he thinks Castro's too tough? This is so funny coming from Rahm Emanuel, whose whole reputation is based on the fact that he's tough. He sends people dead fish and stuff. He takes knives and cuts them into the wood. I mean, he says Castro's too tough. I thought Castro was easy compared to stuff that Rahm does. Good God. Anyway, Rahm's saying Castro's too tough. By the way, yes, he named all the people he liked. Notice who wasn't on the list? Bernie Sanders. Rahm hates Bernie Sanders. That's pretty much clear. That's because Bernie didn't support Rahm in 2015, if you recall. He came to town and supported one. Chewy Garcia.
So there you are, Rahm's appearance last night.
Can I pick up on one thing here?
Yeah.
This is why I think this is such an important point.
Yeah.
Tell me who was for opt-in or opt-out on the Medicare for all. I think I follow policy. I'm confused, okay? No. And I had something to do with the last health care bill. But the biggest part a candidate has to express over the arc of the candidacy is why here? Yeah. What gets me up in the morning? That question about when you fell down or your resiliency tells you about the motivation towards either a health care position or why did Mayor Pete decide to join the armed forces?
Oh, my God. That's one of Mayor Rahm's favorite themes. Why did Mayor Pete decide to join the armed forces? What about Mayor Pete's record in South Bend? Why is it that so many black residents of South Bend cannot stand Mayor Pete? That would be a good question for Mayor Pete to have to answer in a national debate. What do you think about that, D, huh?
Yeah.
Rough. Yeah. Anyway, Rahm's over. I remember Rummana Hussain is in the studio. It's the Rummana Rundown every Friday on the Ben Joravsky Show. Rummana, I remember, I think you and I discussed this, definitely discussed it with McDumpke. One point, Rahm wrote an essay chiding journalists for not asking the correct questions of Mayor Pete. Remember that? Great advice for Rahm for journalists. Any journalist who follows Rahm advice, good luck with that. But remember he was saying there's correct questions they should be asking Mayor Pete?
Yeah, I do remember that. I don't remember I just thought it was funny, but I can't. I'm trying to recall what particularly he said about I don't know if he mentioned his own administration or questions that were asked about him. He was just saying that journalists aren't asking the right questions and need to ask tougher questions.
No, it really wasn't tougher questions.
Or no, it's just the right question.
The right question. And so the right questions to be asked of Mayor Pete, who was clearly a candidate that Mayor Rahm was liking at the time, the right question were questions that would make Mayor Pete look good. So his advice to journalists to ask questions would be something along the lines of, Mayor Pete, I love you very much. Why are you so great? Every day I wake up wondering, why are you so great? Well, thanks you for that question, Rahm. That's a great question. Why am I great? So that was sort of the advice that Mayor Rahm was giving to
I just remember the article. Forgive me, I don't remember the crux of the story itself.
All right, so I am not going to ask you any questions about...
Before you ask any questions, we got to take a break, sir. So we would love to hear your thoughts on the debate. What do you think about Rahm's performance? We're going to play clips throughout the actual debate, too. We just want to let everybody hear Rahm's stellar performance from the pre-show and post-show. But yeah, stick around. More Ben Joravsky Show on the way. But we got to talk to you about this, podcast fans. The team at the Sun-Times has a new show to add to your listening lineup. That's right. We have Podcast Neighbors, Ben. It's the football season. Get the inside scoop on the Chicago Bears with Hallis Intrigue. It's the latest podcast from the Chicago Sun-Times. Tune in to hear Sun-Times sports reporters and Bears experts, including Patrick Finley, Jason Lassier, I'm just going to butcher these names, and more, I'll say. They evaluate games, make predictions, provide insights, and analyze the day's big stories. Stay informed this football season. Listen to Hallis Intrigue at suntimes.com/Hallis, and be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Check it out now at suntimes.com/Hallis. And for those who may not be from Chicago, Hallis is Hallas. Don't go anywhere. The Ben Joravsky Show will be right back, live from the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
It's the butter cow, which has 9 hearts to represent the 9 essential nutrients in milk. That's right, it's made entirely out of butter, and it's a state fair tradition since at least 1922.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Get to know your city on one of Chicago Architecture Center's 65 walking tours. Hear the unforgettable secrets and stories behind Chicago architecture from our expert docents. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a tour right now. Oh, wow, look at that building. Get a special discount for Illinois residents from July 15th to August 15th. All Illinois residents get 50% off select walking tours. Visit architecture.org/IL-resident. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Benny J, take it away.
In the studio with me, it's the Rummana Rundown every Friday on the Ben Joravsky Show. All right, Rummana, before we go to the local news of the day, there's one thing I have to ask you. You and I have talked about it briefly. Samina Mustafa, who will be our guest at 4:45, cannot wait for that breakdown. Yeah, we're going to have a whole segment, an hour at least, Leticia Wallace and Samina Mustafa talking about the debates. And Samina's already told me like some of the things on her mind. One of them is Andrew Yang's comment that it was a wisecrack. I'm Asian, so I know a lot of doctors. This is like why he's an expert.
I'm curious what she
started to say, and I said, hold it till 4:45 when we have the live show, because I like to really not know what Samina's going to say. I like to be surprised.
Well,
but it was on her mind.
I'll tell you, I'll mention her a bit when I talk about, but it was funny because I'm personally not watching the debates. I'm reading about them the next day. I just feel like there's just too many people in the crowd right now, the crowded field Democrats. I don't feel like I'm waiting until the crowd kind of thins out a little. I admit it. But I'm having friends. My friends
this ain't
are
working for me. Go ahead. This is like Maureen O'Donnell saying, I haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I read an article about it.
No, but then I just read about it the next day to see who won and who lost.
All right, go ahead. Fair
and
enough.
Anyway, well, yesterday, I should say one quick thing. Before I was going to bed, I was looking at my phone, and my husband, Mick Dumke, was like, what are you looking at that's so important? And I said earrings, and he thought I said hearings. And I'm like, no, I said earrings. And I don't care about any hearings right now. But anyway,
you hear
just
that,
to show
Mick?
you.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can go off on a tangent on that conversation, but I won't. Anyway, so a friend of mine, while I was actually at an exercise class, and she's like, anyone watching the debates? And I said, I'm not. I don't want to watch them right now. And then she told me about Andrew Yang's comments about how he said, I'm Asian, so I know a lot of doctors. And then he talked about, I think, the healthcare.
Yeah. His notion that he's an expert in healthcare is because he knows a lot of doctors.
Yeah. And then my sister was on this WhatsApp thread. We have this WhatsApp thread and some friends, and my sisters are on it. And and my sister's like, oh, that's stereotypical. And then I'm like, well, so the friend who sent me the text is a doctor. She's South Asian, and she's married to a doctor who's part Syrian and part Mexican. But and then my sister is married to a doctor. She's not a doctor, and her daughter is going to med school right now.
A lot of doctors in this.
And
story.
then I just thought it was funny. I'm like, well, it is a stereotype. But a lot of people were. And then my father was a doctor too, but Samina's mom is a doctor. Just bringing that up, just to say that we do know. I can tell in my South Asian community. But that doesn't mean every single Asian person knows a lot of doctors. And then some people on Twitter were saying, well, I'm Asian, I don't know a lot of doctors. So it is definitely a stereotype. But I admit, as a South Asian, I don't know a lot of doctors. And when you had that panel at the Hideout, that you guys were talking about the healthcare industry, and I told my husband, I'm like, well, you guys don't have any doctors.
Yeah.
And because he was talking about how
I don't know a lot of doctors, actually. I'm just thinking about how many doctors do I know?
I was going to say, not to be stereotypical, but you're Jewish.
Yeah,
I would think that you know a lot of doctors.
I don't know any doctors. Well, that's like, okay, Donald Trump got in trouble. Even Donald Trump never gets in trouble. But Donald Trump was, I don't know where he was talking, but he was giving a speech or a comment somewhere, and he said there were a lot of Jewish people in the audience.
Yeah.
And he goes,
probably said something about lawyers.
No, he says, I want people like you to be counting my money. Okay, so he was just blatantly going to the stereotype.
Yeah.
So the stereotype, so it's like a two-pronged thing. On one hand, it's okay, I guess, for Andrew Yang to make doctors. By the way, he made a joke in the last debate
about being good at math.
Yeah, I'm good at math. I'm Asian. I'm good at math, and everybody's like, "How are we supposed to take this?"
Well, I'm South Asian. I'm better than math than most the average American, but I'm not that good for South Asian.
I'm terrible at math. Although I can do random add things together. Like if you ask me right now, D, what's 5 and 5? 10. All right, Here you go. Okay.
But anyway,
Eat your heart out,
a
buddy.
friend of mine also texted me about the record player comment that Joe Biden made, and then I sent a text to Mick today, and I know he was getting offended by it because it sounds like you, Mick.
Wait, time out. Let's play. Let's listen.
Play the radio. Make sure the television. Make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone. Make sure the kids hear words.
Make sure the kids hear words. Listen. Now here's my thing. It's okay, I guess, for Andrew Yang to make minor jokes about him knowing doctors because he's Asian.
Or being good at math.
I guess it's okay. I'm not quite sure it's appropriate, actually, because on one hand, it's a mixed message.
Yeah,
on one
because
hand, you want to tell people you should not cling to social stereotypes, all right? And now you got this guy running for president of the United States saying, hey, you should vote for me because I'm Asian and I'm good at math.
Yeah, and exactly. And I know a lot of Asian Americans, including me, don't like that stereotype of the model minority. And that's what it plays into. But I just thought it was funny. I do. I am South Asian, and I do know a lot of doctors, and a lot of my South Asian friends are very good at math.
And I'll say this. So I believe that the only people who are allowed to make fun of Joe Biden for being forgetful and borderline senile are other old people who are forgetful and borderline. Oh, I see. It's okay to make fun of the old guy.
It's okay to make fun of old white baby boomers. That's the way I see it. Well, I mean, I just don't get.
That's because you're not an old white baby boomer. You may think differently if you were.
That's true. That's true. But I feel like the record player comment, it just didn't make sense with the question that was asked. And I know a lot of people feel like it was tone deaf. They're like, what are you saying? Like,
oh no, it was absolutely.
It just made no sense at all.
I mean, if you read the question and then you read the response, Rummana, and when I was starting the show, you weren't here, but it reminded me of the old days of Mayor Richard M. Daley and some of his utterly absurd responses to questions wherever he would go, and people kind of understood. They had a sense of what he was getting at. You know what I mean? That was part of his appeal, and so I think that actually helped Joe Biden because I think so. Yes, I do believe.
And the more you hear it, you kind of make sense. Let's listen again.
Play the radio. Make sure the television. Make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone. Make sure the kids hear words.
Yeah, never mind. I don't know what the hell he's saying.
I was gonna say.
Make sure kids hear words.
I just thought it was funny that he's like, oh, television. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, record player. So is he saying like the record player is more updated than the television set? I don't know. It was just kind of funny.
I can't.
And it sounded like he was about to say phonograph, but
he was
maybe he was going to say phone.
And no, another thing he did, my wife and I noticed this at the debate last night. Another thing he did, he had a hard time remembering the names of the people who were standing next to him. And this is something I struggle with. So my conventional way, D knows this, is to say, oh boy. You know, oh boy, D? And he's like, and then we've been working together so long, he kind of knows who I'm getting at. So Biden would say, my friend on the left. And I presume that meant Elizabeth Biden because she was...
But he didn't mean left politically.
No, I think he literally meant because he was surrounded by lefties.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. Yeah. But, you know, I'm really good with names, but I can understand some people are really not that good with names. And if he's older, I
watch what you're about to say.
I know, I'm saying... No, even a lot of younger people.
Grandpa, really hold your ears.
I know a lot of younger people are bad with names too, but I'm really good with names. So,
good with names.
But I know some people are very bad with them, so I understand that.
All right,
and there's so many people in the race right now, so
there's a lot of them. But it was funny. He goes, "My good friend on the left," and I give him credit for this. I'm dyslexic, so I have a hard time judging between my left and my right.
Yeah.
So usually what I have to do is literally, I'm not making this up, pick up a pen. Oh, I write with my right hand. That's my right. So at least he didn't do that, Rummana. At least he didn't go, hold on. Let's see, my left. Oh, Elizabeth Warren. Anyway, that's who was on his left. All right, let's move away from the debates for a moment and talk about some of the local issues as we generally do with Rummana. Let's start off with, it was in today's Sun-Times, Tim Evans.
Yeah.
We talked about this on Tuesday with Maya. This was, of course, the race. The judges get to vote for it. The head of the Cook County Judiciary. Talk about what went down yesterday.
Yeah, so they had a vote at the Daly Center yesterday. I believe there's 254 Cook County judges. So Tim Evans is the chief of Cook County Court. I guess that's his title, if I'm using the correct title. And he actually chief judge. His challenger yesterday was Lorna Popes, who's also a judge.
Probst. There's an R in there.
Probst. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, so Tim Evans won, and it was 143 to 102. I think the last time he was, I guess, had a close challenger was when it was former Alderman Allen. And I guess that was a closer vote.
Tom Allen, yeah.
Yeah, Tom Allen. And so anyway, it was 143 to 102, and he talked to one of Lorna Propst's biggest, I guess, campaign thing was that she was going to want to get rid of term limits, if that's the correct term. Yeah, and so she was, because Tim Evans has been in there since 92. I thought it was longer than that.
No,
because
Tim Evans has been a judge since 92. But
92. Sorry, 2001.
Yes.
But he's been a judge since 92, but being a kid, I remember seeing his face everywhere because he ran for mayor, and that's why I feel like I've seen him forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I thought it was longer than 2001. But it's kind of funny because Mark Brown wrote the column.
It's a funny column.
He's a great
yeah.
columnist. Mark actually saw me before the vote was being taken. He's like, I should take you with me because you'll recognize a lot of these judges and you could tell me who is who. And so we kind of laughed about that. And so I thought it was funny when Mark talks about how Judge Evans started talking about, well, the average Supreme Court justice is close to 90 years. And Mark was like, well, actually, the average age is 67.
Yeah, but who's counting? As everybody knows who listens to the show, Rummana for years was the courthouse reporter at the Criminal Justice Building on 26th and Cal. And the issue that that Probst was running on this her central complaint about Tim Evans, follow me in this, Rummana, is that she didn't think he was vigilant enough in defending judges. Who were up for a re-election. And she was talking in particular about Matt Coughlin, who was defeated one of the few times I can recall where a judge did not get the 60% approval. What a bizarre system of electing judges we have, but whatever, that's our system.
Yeah, it's hard. It's confusing. I mean, even for me, for someone who covers the criminal justice system, there's so many judges I see, and I don't sit in the courtrooms all the time. And so I remember whenever there's a vote and there's for judges up for retention, you kind of have to look at what the Bar Association says. Or I've used the Sun-Times as a cheat sheet.
Yeah.
When I go, but I do know some of the judges when I go back there because I covered 26 and Cal.
Well, you have experience, obviously, because you see.
But the average person doesn't, and I'm someone who does have experience, and I still feel like I need, a cheat sheet.
A cheat sheet, and I appreciate those cheat sheets, and it was hard for me to be sympathetic to Lorna Probst because she was saying essentially that Judge Evans, in his position, should just fall in line behind any judicial candidate as long as they're an incumbent, almost like the attitude that Nancy Pelosi is supposed to have for congressmen. If they're a member or Michael Madigan has toward legislators, if you're a member of my caucus, I'm for you, no matter what you do. And I just don't think that's an appropriate position a chief judge should have. If you have evidence that a judge is not doing his or her job well, that they're somehow
I agree. I
dysfunctional.
said you should still be able to speak out. You're not going to say, oh, I'm just going to defend them just because they're part of my group. Yeah. That's like saying if there's a journalist who's unethical, I'm not going to back them because they're unethical.
Yeah, you may like them on some level, but yes, exactly.
So yeah, I think just because someone's in your profession doesn't mean you have to defend them. I think you have to be fair with every single case. And there might be some cases where a judge is unfairly targeted.
Yes.
There have been cases where I've been in judges' courtrooms and, there's one case that kind of taints them. And then everybody, then there's articles about them. And I've seen judges that are worse and they tend to stay on. So I'm just saying there's judges I've been in their courtrooms and I'm like, how are you a judge? Well, I'm just saying as someone who is not a lawyer, it's like, I understand the law better than you do. And I'm not saying all judges because there's some judges that I think are very, very good. But I've been in courtrooms at 26 and Cal and I'm like, how could this person be a judge?
Well, Rummana, I have far less experience than you in covering the courthouse. Although a few times I've done it, I've seen some bizarre behavior by judges. And I do wonder, how is this person on the bench?
Yeah.
And I don't want to give out names because I could have just caught this one judge on a particularly bad day. But I'm like, God, dang, you're weird.
No. There are a lot of, I've been, and then there's some judges who I think just get unfairly targeted because of the way they are, but doesn't mean they're bad judges necessarily.
Well, Tim Evans is a consummate politician. For many years, he was an alderman. He was Harold Washington's floor leader back in the good old days of council wars in 1983 to 87.
That's why I remember his face for a long time.
And so he is a very likable human being, and I'm not surprised that he was victorious. And I'm actually pleased that he was victorious, because I don't believe judges should just fall in line behind any judge, no matter how bad. All right, speaking of judges, Ann Burke, we gave a shout out to Mark Brown, outstanding columnist for our beloved Bright One. Let's give a shout out to the Tribune. Eric Zorn, a very good columnist for the Chicago Tribune. I thought he wrote a good one today about Ann Burke, who is now going to be the chief judge of the Illinois State Supreme Court. And she, of course, is married to Alderman Ed Burke. Not a big friend of the show.
I should disclose that I used to work for Michael Sneed, and Michael Sneed is good friends with the Burkes, especially Ann Burke. So I do know Ann Burke on a certain level, because when I worked for Michael Sneed, I did talk to her a couple times. And I as you know, this is politics aside, she seems like a very nice person, but that's politics aside. Yeah. So she was voted on the Illinois Supreme Court by her fellow judges, but there was I guess there was not a complaint, but some sort of
a complaint lodged
by Jeffrey Orr, who obviously the name, if it sounds familiar to anybody, is the son of David Orr, the former city clerk or the Cook County clerk.
Cook County clerk, former alderman of the 49th Ward. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there was a complaint that she had hosted a political, but there was a political party at her house for Tony Preckwinkle in January 2018. The invitation said Ed Burke, but there is question as to what her, alignment was with this party itself. I thought that was pretty interesting, because haven't they had a couple parties for people or political fundraisers? I guess it was a political fundraiser. And I think Tony Preckwinkle talked about it a little too, saying that, the only reason her and Ann Burke's name wasn't on the invitation because she was a candidate for retention. So I don't know, Tony Preckwinkle, I don't know if she's outing her in a way. And, as we all know, Ed Burke is being investigated by the feds.
Well, he's been indicted.
And investigated.
At the time, he was under investigation. You're right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so Jeff Orr filed this with the Judiciary Inquiry Board, and they basically exonerated Ann Burke, I guess if that's the right term, but they didn't disclose why. Because they said that legally, they said something like legally they don't have to, or they don't have to disclose, why they came up with this decision.
Well, this is a very strange situation. This occurred in the midst of the mayoral race, and Ed Burke. The timing for Tony Preckwinkle couldn't be worse. Tony Preckwinkle thought she would just be ushered in as mayor of the city of Chicago after Rahm stepped down. She was one of the many who jumped in the race after Rahm stepped down. And then all of a sudden, shortly thereafter, the story bursts on the front pages of every newspaper in town that Ed Burke is under indictment. And all of a sudden it matters that people like Tony Preckwinkle have had a close relationship with Ed Burke for all these years. And then all of a sudden it's revealed that Ed Burke had a fundraiser at his home for Tony Preckwinkle.
Then she has to distance herself.
So she has to distance her. The way she distanced herself by saying, it wasn't Ed's fundraiser, it was Ann's fundraiser. Well, there's a rule that says judges can't hold fundraisers. So Jeff Orr, little troublemaker Jeff, I see you out there.
Do you know him?
Yeah, Jeff Orr is David Orr's son.
I just don't know him.
He's a hideout regular. He comes. In fact, one day I'm going to get him on this show. He's very knowledgeable about politics, and so he filed this complaint, which Eric Zorn is absolutely correct. We need to know. I mean, it's not some frivolous complaint. It's clearly a violation of the rule. We just pretend the rule doesn't exist.
No, I agree. I think they're good questions to ask, and it's something that we shouldn't brush away. I just thought, as someone, I definitely follow politics. I'm not saying I'm the expert, but I thought Ed Burke had a lot of these parties.
He did
at his house. Like Kim Foxx had one, and if I don't think I'm mistaken, I remember that because
he had a party for Kim Foxx. I don't remember.
I think there was some sort of fundraiser for her.
Okay, I do. I actually just don't remember. I was just thinking.
I could be wrong, but I do remember because I was having this talk with someone. They're like, "Oh, how could she?" This is before the indictment, and someone was just saying like, "How could she have a part? How could she be okay with being at a party that's hosted by Ed Burke. Maybe it wasn't at their house.
Well, here's the deal on Ed Burke. And Ed Burke held power, unprecedented amount of power for a long time, and everybody kind of looked the other way.
Exactly,
with Ed Burke
and I feel like everybody welcomed.
Yeah,
they're like, oh, if he's supporting you, that's great. You're gonna get your foot in the door,
and
right?
Speaking of judges, Ed Burke has a huge say in who is selected by the Democratic Party to get the nomination to fill a judicial vacancy. So now Ed Burke's under indictment. Nobody wants anything to do with him. But about 5 or 6 years ago, everybody was kissing Ed Burke's ring.
Not even 5 or 6 years ago, just before he got indicted.
So like 2 years ago.
Not even less than 2 years ago. Just like, wasn't it less than a year ago?
You're right. It was about his January of, I'm losing track of time, 2018.
Yeah. I'm just the day before that.
Yeah,
everybody was okay with it.
Yeah, so you're right. And even after the story, the Sun Times,
and he got voted in.
He got
reelected. Yeah,
but even after the Sun Times and Tribune broke the story that the feds were investigating him, he had a fundraiser, and people lined up for the fundraiser. So you're absolutely correct. It was very recently that people, I don't want anything to do with Ed Burke. And you know what, Rummana, this when I was giving out grades, I was forced to give out grades for Lori Lightfoot, and I gave her an A for distancing herself from Ed Burke. And immediately I got Lori haters, and there's a lot of them out there. I'm too easy on her. Now, she only distanced.
Like you think I'm easy on Rom.
She can't win in this town. It's too easy on Lori to give her an A because she distanced herself from a guy who's. But I agree. Listen, and I say this. Everybody's up in arms. You and I talk about it all the time, Smollett Gate. It's so hard on Kim Foxx. What did she know? When did she know it? But look at the double standard.
No, I think
Burke is just sliding right through.
I think the question should be asked and answered. Yeah. I don't think it's unreasonable for anybody to ask these questions.
Absolutely.
But you wonder if it's just going to be something that Eric Zorn is just going to mention and nobody else. You know what I mean? It's like it's something that should definitely be pushed.
All right. One other thing that's been in the news today, locally and nationally, marries them both. Let's get your thoughts on this: the ongoing feud between Texas Senator Ted Cruz and our very own Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
Yeah. I was actually working on Labor Day when the first tweets came out from Lori Lightfoot. I believe Ted Cruz first tweeted about gun control and how in Chicago gun control hasn't really worked. He tweeted to the effect of, look what's happening in Chicago. Because my reporter, Mitch Dudek, was doing a roundup of the violence over the Labor Day weekend. And so he told me he had to mention this back and forth because then Lori Lightfoot said, keep our name out of your mouth. And it kind of snowballed since then. I don't know if you paid attention, but Father Flager is actually the one I don't know if he was the first one to invite or if it was Lori, but I did a story the next day where Father Flager, he was talking about a gun control rally that he was organizing, he and a lot of his allies in Chicago, and it was going to be it's going to be later this month, I think September 25th, if I'm not mistaken. It's later this month. Anyway, he had said he was inviting Ted Cruz to come to Chicago and to see what's happening on the ground. And so I think then Lori Lightfoot I think it was a back and forth with them. And then Lynn Sweet, our DC correspondent, was at this Christian Science Monitor event yesterday. And then she asked Ted Cruz, like, would you come? And he said that he's like, he said he seemed like to be open to it, but then he's like, I don't want to be part of this political circus. He said, I know it's, he's like, he mentioned Lori Lightfoot's tone and anger in her comments. So he's like, well, I don't know. But then he kind of went back and said, I'd be open to coming. And then he talked about how he's been having some video chat with Alyssa Milano about gun control.
I saw that one. It's very bizarre. The whole thing is bizarre. It will be a political circus,
yes.
No doubt, and it will work obviously for both Ted Cruz and Lori Lightfoot. They'll get to play to the home base for each one. So
yeah, and Chicago kind of becomes this punching bag, I feel like, for a lot of Republicans. I mean, obviously, Trump uses Chicago.
I have on our next segment, we're talking about violence in Chicago and attempts to bring peace to Chicago. Very important issue with Vaughn, Bryant, and Frank Perez. We'll be talking about that. But it is, in terms of Republicans, I'll just put this out there. I don't know if my next guest will agree with me on this one. But when it comes to the Republican Party, I've not seen the Republican Party do anything to help cities like Chicago deal with everything, their violence problems, their budget problems, school funding problems, nothing. All they do is use the city of Chicago as a punching bag to mock
unfairly. And nobody's saying that there's not a problem. I think a lot of people in Chicago are working towards trying to solve the gun violence problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that. All right, before I let you go, cannot be a Rummana Rundown without a Rummana recommendation.
I have two. I don't know. I'm curious. And I want to watch both of these things. They're totally opposite. I want to see Hustlers, the Jennifer Lopez movie.
Me too.
Because I love Jennifer Lopez. I think I know she does a lot of schlock, but I tend to like her. And if she does and she's been getting rave reviews, and normally this wouldn't be the kind of movie I'd want to see, but everybody says she does a great job. They said the cast does a great job. Constance Wu, who was from Crazy Rich Asians, she's in it. Cardi B, Lizzo. It kind of has an interesting Keke Palmer, who was in God, what movie was it last year? But it was an Oscar-nominated movie. She was also, I think she's a DePaul grad. But anyway, it seems like a pretty good cast. It's about how it's based on a real life story about how these strippers ripped off these Wall Street guys and made money off of them. And I think it was a New Yorker piece.
I think it was New York Magazine.
Yeah, Julia Stiles plays the reporter who's kind of doing. Yeah, she's in it. Yeah, she's in it too.
Julia, that's in the 90s, man. Yeah. Can you name the movie, D? A Chicago-based movie, Julia Stiles?
Yeah, the dancing movie. I'm forgetting what it was called.
The Last Dance, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm looking at my guests.
My guests saved the last dance.
I'm looking at my other guests. They're like, don't look at me, man.
Big quality of the Ben Joravsky show. Ben asked questions he didn't even know the answer to.
No, I knew Save the Last Dance because my kids loved it.
Yeah,
I saw that movie like 3 times. Save the Last Dance.
So she's in it too. She plays a journalist. And then the other show, I mean, that's the movie I do want to see. It feels like a chick flick, so I don't know if my husband's going to want to watch it.
He's not going to go see it.
Yeah, there's something.
Not going.
The other show I am going to recommend is called Unbelievable. Did you hear about that?
No, which one's
that? It's actually this is a show that my husband will watch.
Okay.
Because it's based on a news story by his organization, ProPublica.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually a very serious. It's a very sad and serious case involving this young woman who said that she was raped, and then she ends up changing her story, and she gets charged with filing a false report. But then there turns out that there's like similar cases that happen elsewhere. This happened in the state of Washington. Anyway, the story's been getting rave reviews, and because it's based on I never read the ProPublica story. So I don't want to read it because I want to watch. Maybe I should read it first.
All right.
Because I'd rather read it. But
going back to your more frivolous recommendation, I've been threatening to have you and Maureen O'Donnell sit down for a bonus show where we analyze a movie like we did with Sergio Mims and Chris Adams on Once Upon a Time in America. So if this movie's good, and Maureen, I know you're listening out there, you're going to have to go watch it. Reading an article about it is not good enough. Maureen O'Donnell knows movies inside and out.
We were talking about movies earlier this week. And
so maybe we'll watch this one. If we like it, we'll watch it. We'll sit it down. We'll do the deep dive. Because I'm dying to see it too. I like J-Lo, and Hustler sounds like a good flick. Like a caper movie.
I've always been a J-Lo fan.
So, and J-Lo is a big Rummana Hussain fan, and Rummana's on the show every Friday. Thank you so much, Rummana. Appreciate it. We have Vaughn, Bryant, and Frank Perez ready to come on. We'll be right back after this.
Did not say, John Kennedy did not say, I have a plan to get a man to the moon, and so we're going to do it, and I think we can all work together, and maybe we can get a man on the moon. And John Kennedy said, by the end of this decade, we are going to put a man on the moon. Because John Kennedy was back in the day when politics...
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. Chicagoland Cremation Options.com. One more time, Chicagoland Cremation Options.com.
Attention Chicago innovators and creators, 2019 Chicago Ideas Week is coming soon. October 12th through the 17th, this annual Ideas Festival is back, and it's the largest, most affordable Ideas Festival of its kind. They bring in hundreds of thought leaders from around the globe and some local to share ideas and spark action all across Chicago. To get a better idea of what to expect, here's a bit of audio from last year's Chicago Ideas Week with special guest and Chicago comedian Cameron Esposito.
Everything that I have ever tried to do has had two motivations. One is I really do believe in trying to create social change, and then the other one is I'm scared and alone too, so I would like for you to join me. You know, every job that I have, I try to make sure to hold the door open. That's like my motto for like if I get through, you're coming with me, and I believe in that wholeheartedly, and especially if I have more privilege than you, like I'm holding the door open for you even wider.
October 12th through the 17th, it's 2019 Chicago Ideas Week. Tickets go on sale to members on August 22nd and to general public September 10th. Once again, if you're an innovator or creator in the city of Chicago or even outside the city, you must join us for Chicago Ideas Week, October 12th through the 17th. For tickets and event information, head to chicagoideas.com. That's chicagoideas.com, and we hope to see you October 12th through the 17th for 2019 Chicago Ideas Week. And they just announced Hillary Clinton will be at Chicago Ideas Week. That's pretty awesome. Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show is just moments away. But before we get into that, the Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you in part by the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A giant thank you to those unions for sponsoring us here. And, of course, today's show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2. Let's go. It is Friday, September 13th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, it's the return of Senator Robert Martwick, and it's the Benny J. Show debut of Vaughn, Bryant, and Frank Perez. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Vaughn, Bryant, and Frank Perez are in the studio. We're talking about Partners for Peaceful and Safe Communities. We talk about ways to end some of the gun violence in the city of Chicago, the violence in the city of Chicago. Before we bring Vaughn and Frank on, D, what's the update?
Got a couple of updates here. First off, at about, you said 4:45 today, right?
That is correct.
4:45 today, we're going to be doing a post-debate special. Samina Mustafa, and who's going to be joining?
Leticia Wallace.
Oh, wow.
Leticia Wallace, former lieutenant governor candidate.
Clean the place up.
No, I love Leticia Wallace. She hasn't been on the show in a while.
Holy crap. I got to clean it up here. We got important people coming in. Leticia Wallace and Samina Mustafa are going to be in, and we're going to be doing a post-debate special. We're going to leave it as a bonus interview for you to download, but we're going to do something a little special today and throw it up on the live stream as well. So at about 4:45, come back. You may see a notification or something. You just look for it, all right? We're going to be doing the live stream on the post-debate show, but if you miss it, don't worry. You can download it at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, or wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Like every weekend, it's a Benny J bonus interview. Check out the rest of the interviews as well. All right, up next, right now on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page and chicagoreader.com, It's the latest Chicago Reader column from our very own Ben Joravsky. This article is titled A Tale of Two Tax Bills. Ben Joravsky, what are the people going to learn when reading this?
Absolutely. I think Vaughn, Bryant, and Frank Perez might appreciate this story. Anybody who lives in the city of Chicago would appreciate this story. I do a little deep dive. Lori Lightfoot's going around the city holding hearings on the budget, and with her trying to figure out ideas, ways to fill the gap. There's an $838 million, I think that's how much she says it is, budget deficit for the city is facing. And I'm urging her in this story not to fill that by raising property taxes. I say this not just because I pay way too much in property taxes, and I've been complaining about my property tax bill forever, but I believe that there's a larger problem that the city is becoming less and less affordable to so many of the folks who've lived here forever. And I don't believe Chicago benefits if we become too poor or too rich. I believe we should have a middle class or working class in the city of Chicago, a real balance in the city of Chicago. And the reality is the property tax is a regressive tax, and by that I mean it hits people who can least afford it to pay it the hardest. So I think Lori Lightfoot, and I'm offering this as a recommendation, don't know if she's going to listen to what I say. Generally, mayors in the city of Chicago do not listen to what I say, but I'm offering her, I'm hoping she does. Don't be like Rahm, all right? Listen to what I say, Lori. Think progressive when it comes to raising revenues to meet the city's needs. Don't just hammer us with another property tax hike. I think it turns people off against government. It makes the city unaffordable or less affordable to folks that we want to stay here, who've been good citizens and been living here. And I talk about somebody like this in the story. So that is what the column's about, and that's my advice to Lori Lightfoot.
Wait, what's that, Mayor Rahm?
Take a chill pill, man.
Okay, yeah, Mayor
Chill
Rahm.
out, dude.
He never listened to anything I had to say.
Chill
Mayor
out.
Rahm.
It's posted on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, ChicagoReader.com. Go check it out. And speaking of the Facebook page, we have been waiting to hit 2,000 likes because when we do that, we are going to have our next caption contest. Right now, I'm looking at the page, people. We are at 1,989. 1,989 likes. 11 more to go, people. Head over to the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page if you've yet to like it. Go like it. Tell your friends. Share. And when we hit 2,000 likes, we will have our next caption contest, and it is going to be a Lori Lightfoot caption contest.
Sounds exciting. Lori Lightfoot, Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Don't raise those property taxes, Lori. All right, that's just Ben speaking. It's not my next two guests are not saying that. It's my next two guests are Vaughn, Bryant, and Frank Perez. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having us.
All right, we'll start with you, Vaughn. Tell folks a little bit about yourself, how you got here into this issue.
So my name is Vaughn Bryant. I'm the executive director at Metropolitan Family Services, and I'm responsible for shepherding Communities Partnering for Peace, which is funded by the Partnership for Safe and Peaceful Communities. I came to this work back in 2009. I moved here from I worked for Chicago Public Schools. About 4 months in, they asked me to build the Safe Passage program. So that's what I did. So that was my first sort of foray in the city government here in Chicago.
And I think you see that in Washington with the legislation around prison sentences and so forth for certain crimes and whatnot. They're starting to see the bigger picture. We need to do something else. In terms of the Light in the Night, I do want to stress that the Light in the Night activities that we're doing, we do 3 nights a week with not only that target population that we're trying to get to and talk to and have them change their way of life, but also the entire community, because we're going into some areas that have basically abandoned whatever resources are there. We're going into areas where a park may have been abandoned because of the danger in that park of being shot. We want to get people. We want to get their children. We want to get their parents. We want to get the guys to come back out and understand this park is a sanctuary. Why shouldn't your elders or your young children come and play and have a good time in that park? And if you're involved in that life, you can understand that safety is a priority even for your own loved ones and whatnot. So let's make this a sanctuary and leave this alone. And we're doing things whether it's a barbecue, having food out there, to having music out there, to having live bands out there, to playing musical chairs with women, children, adults, you name it, we're involved. Having arts and crafts where people are finally coming back, and because they see us out there, they feel safe, and the guys themselves realize that, hey, that's a sanctuary. Let's leave that alone. Let's let the community have that peace in that particular area, because their own parents and family members get involved in that.
So I think the thing I would add to that is just the human part of it is to your friends who,
friends in quotes.
Yeah, your friends in quotes is how would they want their friends and family members to be treated if they fell on hard times? Like when you have resources, your kids have a long rope to make mistakes, and you're going to continue to support them regardless of what happens, because you want them to ultimately live a productive life. Now, we know the history of systemic racism in this city. We know about discrimination, especially from the housing perspective. I mean, we know the history of gangs and organized crime in the city of Chicago. So when you add the racial element to it, honestly, as a white person, you have an off-ramp because organized crime was in with the police. They're in with unions. So you end up getting a union job, and there's police and fire and other employees that ultimately probably have that background in their family, right? But their family members found an off-ramp for them, and we're just saying, hey, the same thing is true for all Americans. Yeah. So treat us and treat other people in the same way that you would want to be treated. The other thing I want to add, too, is that the communities we're in are Austin, East and West Garfield Park, North Lawndale, Humboldt Park, Little Village, Back of the Yards, Inglewood, and West Inglewood. So those are the 9 communities that we're in. They're 9 of the most violent cities in Chicago. And we're also, about to add to the mix because there's some other funding that, we've inherited from Cure Violence that is going to bring more partners and more communities to the table.
I just wanted to mention that this is one of the first times in the history, like I said, I've been here a long time, that we've had so many organizations to get together with the help of various funding sources that have pumped some well over $75 million into this collaboration, that so many organizations have gotten together and said, we're going to work together. Rather than player hate and fight against each other, we're going to work together because we have a common goal to reduce violence in our communities. The last point I wanted to make that you alluded to is brown and black people deserve mercy just like any other race. No one race is better off than another, and when it comes to providing them with mercy and stuff for something that they have done, some kind of act they may have committed. We all deserve a chance to change, and I really want to put that forth, because many of the guys, several years ago, I had the Attorney General's office contact us regarding the kind of guys that we hire and the relapse level in the Cure Violence model, and we look like at over 300 employees, and of those 300 employees over a 10-year period, we found that maybe 6 of them had reoffended, of which 3 had been acquitted. Mm-hmm. I'll match that record with the police department, with politicians, with anybody else that's out there when it comes to people who reoffend and so forth.
Listen, you're preaching to the choir in this one. One of my favorite, and I'm not going to, this is me speaking. This is not Frank and this is not Vaughn, but I'm just going to say this. When Donald Trump gets in trouble, all of a sudden, he's got rights, all of a sudden he's complaining about overzealous prosecutors. All of a sudden, he's a big believer in the Constitution. I'm surprised he doesn't buy a membership in the ACLU when he's in trouble, Frank Perez. But when it's some guy in Chicago gets caught up in it, and it gets a criminal record, it's like he's a thug, he's a murderer, he's a criminal, he's a lowlife. He's denigrated all people who have no records, anybody who comes to this country from the southern border. So don't get me started. You guys are both like, man, you're going too political on us. But that's just, when I hear you, that's what triggered my response.
Well, that was my point around mercy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So I hear it. Yeah. I listen to the right wingers, and I watch them like they're throwing Kim Foxx under the bus right now for what went down with Jussie Smollett Gate. All right, and I'm like, all right, it's true. I believe that we should investigate and see what calls were made, this, that, and the other thing. But where were you guys when they were looking the other way when it was Daley's nephew who got into a fight on Rush Street and killed a guy with one punch? And the police said, oh, well, I don't see anything wrong with that. And the old boy skated. Where were you? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Frank's
of course. Don't
go. But I'm just saying, I hear you, and I just see the inconsistency.
Vaughn just said the words, it's a double standard. We treat different people differently instead of trying to be consistent with across the board. You know, our criminal justice system, you can look at that and see that, you know, if you're Caucasian or if you're brown, the sentencing laws are going to be much more harsher on you if you're brown or black and so forth. We know that for a fact.
All right.
Yet all lives matter.
Yes.
All right. All lives do matter, but yes, I get your point. All right. Now, here's something else I've been struggling with for a long time. And I'm of the older persuasion. I've been around a long time. And for as long as I can remember, there's been violence in Chicago. So I have people come on the show, we talk about violence. I always say this. I go, you know, guys, it's not like violence just occurred. I mean, it's been happening for as long as I can remember. It's a very violent city. Frank, you grew up in Chicago. You go to Thule High?
My brothers went to Thule High.
You're a little younger. You're too young for Thule High.
No, I remember Thule High. My older brothers went to Thule High. You know, we got to be careful with that because I grew up in an area back in the 1970s where we were tipping 980 plus murders a year. Okay. And even in our worst, I mean, a couple of years ago, we were up to 700 and right now we're tipping about 3 something in the last couple of years, 400 or 500. That's still 50% of what we were, where we were in the 1970s. And remember that back then the armament wasn't as deadly as it is today. So, you know, that's a misnomer that things are getting worse. They're actually getting better. But the fact of the matter is, any violence, and that's what we're trying to address. Any violence is bad for any community, and certain communities are you know, that have been segregated, that have been disenfranchised. There's a higher rate of violence than other affluent communities, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reduce the violence with this collaboration, and we've been successful in the areas that we've actually reduced violence. So people might, like you were saying, they say, well, it's a waste of money. No, it's not. If we're able to save you money on the trauma units, on the incarceration of people, to do other things with that money, maybe for better schools, maybe for better housing and so forth, then I think it's a win-win for the entire community. Because sometimes we have that attitude that it's only over there, so it doesn't affect me, so I don't have to worry about it. Yes, it does. The violence affects the entire community when it happens, whether it's in West Humboldt Park or whether it's in North Lawndale or whether it's in Inglewood. It's affecting all of us in the city.
All right, Vaughn, I want to ask you this question. It sort of piggybacks on what Frank was just saying. There's like different types of people. Let's just move it out from beyond this particular. There's different types of people in the world. There are people who confront any kind of challenge by punching. All right? I could think of a lot of politicians from our town. That's the way they do it. They punch. They punch. Particularly if they think they can get away with it. They'll punch harder. If it's a bigger person, then maybe they'll think twice. But punch, punch, punch. They're proud of it. All right? I'm not mentioning any names. Don't want to get you guys in political trouble. But you know who I'm talking about. Now, then there's other kinds of people who, and I know this type very well because I think I'm like this type, like, let's talk about something. Let's calm down. Let's just
diplomatic.
Let's take a deep breath. Let's do a little breathing here. I've always believed that type is something that should be promoted in conjunction when we deal with violence in the city of Chicago. I think there's such an impulsiveness in the city of Chicago. People in Chicago, I've noticed, I'm not from Chicago, neither are you, so you have an advantage. But people in Chicago, it's like, I'm from Chicago, I'm tough, I'm going to show you. And they just want to settle it with might, you know what I mean? And our mayors reinforce that to a certain degree, but with the way they act and the way they mistreat people. Is there a way to kind of get people to be more diplomatic, to take that deep breath and just say, you know what, let's calm down, let's chill out. I'm going to listen to what you say, and I'm going to respond. Is there a way to promote that as a way to de-escalate the violence?
Absolutely, and de-escalation training is a part of the Peace Academy. So all of our outreach workers are trained in de-escalation. I mean, the police are really trained in de-escalation. The key is you have to execute on it, and you have to be accountable if you escalate a situation, especially to the point of killing somebody for something that is just unnecessary. So yes, I think that you're absolutely correct that we need to promote that more. We need to execute on it and behave like that more. There is a time and a place for more confrontation, but that's rare. It should be rare occasions. That should be the exception, not the rule. And I mean, we can all benefit from cooler heads prevailing and understanding that we all do really want the same things. We all want the same thing for our family and our children to, live prosperous lives. I mean, the vision that we want to see is that the city of Chicago is one of the safest cities in the world where everybody can live their lives and pursue happiness. Everybody wants that. So now obviously capitalism brings some competition to that, but it still has to be competition within the bounds of, you know, the values we have as a country. And so we have to really live that. And that means, you know, you may not win everything, but that doesn't mean you resort to violence, because the reality, again, if you look at the history of this country, when things don't go your way, we resort to violence. And so to the point that you guys were making about how violence was before, progressively as the world has gone on, we're kinder and gentler in general, because, man, back in the day, I mean, it was like, it was really dog eat dog and survival. Whereas, you know, we're moving to, hey, like there's a different way to do things. And so progressively, you know, we're going to get better. But we have in Chicago a unique situation, because what separates us from other like cities is access to guns. And so, you know, if you took away gun violence and then you looked at all of the violence from there, then we look just like most other cities. So, you know, we have to do some things differently here, and we have to invest in it for a long period of time to get to that point. So if we, you know, for 15 years, if we can really sustain this effort and get to the point of New York and Chicago, then we would be somewhere around 190, New York and LA, I'm sorry. 197 per year, which is a big difference. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm not good at math.
Yeah.
You're telling me that if we had the same murder rate
exactly
in the city of Chicago,
shooting rate
as they have in New York and Los Angeles, we would have 197 murders a year by gun. And how many do we have this year? Do you know offhand?
I'm not sure what the current number is, but it's somewhere in this. I don't know where we are year to date. That's a good question. I think we're somewhere. Yeah, it's actually close to 400. Like I think we were at, when we had the citywide convening, I think it was like 398.
So what is with Chicago?
Well, what you mentioned, the de-escalation, which is what we do with the peace academy. A lot of the stuff that's going on out there, it's not for major. It's really personality driven. You know, you call me a bitch. You said something to my girlfriend. You owe me a few dollars and so forth. And a lot of the violence is act at the spur of the moment, not thinking about it. And what our workers are trained in is how to be able to talk to individuals, get them to calm down, you know, for that first 5 minutes, and then get them away from the situation. So, for example, if you strike somebody, that person is going to be real angry at you that moment you struck them. A couple of hours from now, they still may be angry, but not as angry as they were when you first struck them. A week from now, you're going to be about, you know, the 300th person that maybe had struck them in their life. It's not going to be a big deal. So part of the training that we do is to emphasize to the workers involved in the collaboration of the 9 organization is that there's always someone that can talk to somebody. If you can't be that person, there's somebody else who can get them to rationalize, is it worth you crossing that line? Look at how much you have to lose behind somebody who owes you $100 or because somebody called you a name or something. So we try to get people to think differently. That's the whole thing we're doing, because in these disenfranchised community, a lot of people don't have a lot of anything other than this thing called respect. Right, so they exaggerate that respect to the point that you have to be on pins and needles around them, because anything you say could get them to go off. We've got to re-educate them to realize that there's no shame in being humble to walk away from something.
Right, so there's a re-education, but there's also like you have to get to the source of why people act like that. It's they've been traumatized. So when you've been traumatized and there's some abandonment in terms of the love that you should get from your parents and your extended family, when that's not present, then you do have a snap reaction because you've been traumatized, now either because of what you've seen and experienced or from some sort of abandonment that also causes trauma. So we have to understand that. And that's when you hear the term or the jargon trauma-informed care, that's what they're talking about. Keep those things in mind when you operate with these people. And then the other part of it in terms of when you think about the 4 and Communities Partner for Peace is restorative practices. When there's, you know, an incident that occurs, then you want to restore the relationship between those two individuals. So it's important to intervene early. Like you said, like the reality is, it could be a year away and somebody may still want to retaliate because they've been traumatized. They're not in a position of healing and forgiveness and those sort of things. It's more dog eat dog, eye for an eye. I want to one up versus being one up, because if you take it in the street, the code is like, you know, you're soft and anybody's going to run over you. That sort of thing is very important.
All right, let me ask you this. I'm going to ask you this question first, Vaughn, and then Frank, you weigh in. You can think of your answer while you're listening to him answer. And I'm asking you this question first because you told me you came from New York, all right?
Yeah, I lived in New York
You
before.
lived in New York,
Yep.
all right.
Yep.
So you've had experience in New York, and you've had experience here in the city of Chicago. All right. Now, the behavior that both of you describe that sets off violence is something that I know New Yorkers have. Because there's New Yorkers that have that same chip on their shoulder that you're talking about, Frank, that sets people off. I need respect, etc. And I know people in LA have them too. I know it exists all over the world. But only the city of Chicago do we have a murder rate where our murder rate is higher. So here's my question for you. What is it about the city of Chicago that leads people to settle these differences with a gun at a greater rate than happens in New York or LA or other cities?
A couple of reasons. So one is New York and LA invested in this years ago. So if you think back to Rodney King in LA, that during that time is when LAPD got into a consent decree. So the police had to do something different based on that consent decree. They embraced community policing in a way that, ultimately led them to embrace community outreach, what they call street intervention work. And they've been doing it for a 20-year period, and they had an investment in, so they had a strategy that sustained over time that, really brought their murder rate down. You look at New York as well. They also have an Office of Violence Prevention there. In the city, they spend $35 million a year. That's the city putting money into that. So they've been doing it for a long period of time. And so, over time, the interventions that we're putting in place, they can work, but they have to be sustained. We are just now in 2019 opening the Office of Violence Prevention. I think it's called Public Safety and Accountability. And we have, Susan Lee there, who worked in LA before. So she's seen what's happened in other cities. And so where we are, with Lori Lightfoot, with the team they're putting in place in that office. It's a good time for us, and I think there's a lot of reason for optimism given the infrastructure that we're building in the communities that we're in right now.
If I may, Chicago, we've been at the forefront of doing this kind of work for decades, right? And you mentioned a couple of places. You mentioned California, you mentioned New York. In fact, those two parts of the country took what we were doing, all right, and they took it to the next level. They professionalized it. They got into the city budgets and so forth. Last time I heard of anything like this, of this magnitude getting into the city budget, was the CIN network that under Mayor Harold Washington, and that was quickly scrapped when Daley came into office. So we need violence prevention to be part of the city budget. Now, I'm always hearing that it's money issue. Well, wait a minute, it's money issue. We're not being disrespectful. We always seem to find 110 million or 120 million for law enforcement for overtime. We always seem to find money for disasters and whatnot. I would tell you that the violence that's occurring is an epidemic proportion. It's a disaster. It deserves the same kind of attention that all these other institutions. And so we need to be in that city budget and in a meaningful way, not just a couple of 100,000, not just a couple million. If you want to have an impact in reducing violence, you have to go at it like it's epidemic, and you've got to put amounts of money in it that are going to be able to treat that. In the long run, we will be saving all kinds of money, and the taxpayers will be happy with what we're doing with that money, rather than, they say the definition of insanity is keep doing what you're doing and expect a different result. Come on, aren't we tired of that?
I think the other thing to point out in this is that the good thing of when you make that investment and then simultaneously your economy is doing well. If you think about New York, they always have new people come into that city because there are jobs and there are opportunities there. So when population is increasing because you have an economy and you use that to invest in the people there that are struggling, then you have a win-win situation. And so for us, we're the only major city that's losing population, and violence is part of that. So we should look at what's been done. So we might have figured out how to intervene, but we gotta support that intervention for a sustained period of time, because if we get our economy going as well simultaneously, then again, this is one of the greatest cities to live on earth.
Yeah, the economy is going. Unfortunately, it's not going for everybody at the same rate.
Exactly.
And I know both of you know what I'm talking about. Frank Perez, Vaughn, Bryant, before I let you go, tell folks if they want to get in touch with your organizations, how they can do it, if they want to participate in some of these programs, how they can do it, all that good information.
So First, you can go to Metropolitan Family Services website /CP4P. But I want to list the organizations. So Institute for Nonviolent Chicago, Breakthrough Urban Ministries, Alliance of Local Service Organizations, UCAN, New Life Centers, EMAN, Precious Blood Ministries of Restoration, and Target Area Development Corp. Those are all of the organizations that we work with now, and we're going to be expanding into some other organizations as well, like Enlace, like One Northside, Claretian Associates, Project Hood, Aclivis. So, we have a great coalition. One thing people say is Chicago's a city of neighborhoods. And I love that because it brings diversity throughout the city. But we got to be one Chicago on this. And that means that people from all over the city have to come together because we all have a goal of reducing violence.
All right, fair enough. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use my power. I'm going to kill that TIF deal that they're going to have in Lincoln Yards, take that $1.3 billion and use it to fund your program. How about that? I just solved the problem of crime just in one talk show. Man, I should be the mayor of the city of Chicago. Anyway, Frank Perez, Vaughn, Bryant, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Bring you back. Thank you. I appreciate you coming in.
It's been a pleasure being here.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Rob Martwick is on deck. We're going to be talking politics with him when we return. Hey, everybody. What you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
I want to start with Rahm Emanuel, the former mayor of Chicago, chief of staff to President Obama, and someone who knows Vice President Biden very well. If you're in his ear tonight, what are you telling him?
Yeah, energy, passion. And you got to come alive in that area and be also light about it in the sense that you're going to be between Bernie and you're going to be between Elizabeth. They're going to tag team you. And if you can show that it doesn't get to you, that will be as much as anything. But remember, this is 3 hours. You have to have that energy and that impact all 3 hours, not the first two. So that would be it.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you in part by Green Element Resale. They're located at 6241 North Broadway in Chicago. And people, I say it all the time, but I mean it every time. They're amazing. Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. until 7 p.m. Sundays, 12 until 7 p.m. It's Green Element Resale. Books, lamps, antiques, clothes, furniture, so many things at Green Element Resale. It's fantastic. Let's see. I'm looking at greenelementresale.com. Oh, they also have links to theguardian.com, the news website. That's pretty cool. That's really nice here, Green Element Resale. greenelementresale.com, 6241 North Broadway in Chicago. Oh, they got board games. I'm looking at a table right now. Tons of furniture, tons of lamps and appliances, antiques, all kinds of stuff here. It's Green Element Resale. Go there and save tons of money. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
State Senator Rob Martwick is in the studio. It's hard for me to say. I'm so used to calling him state rep, but he's a state senator now. Congratulations on the promotion. I think you've been on the show since you were promoted. But old habits are hard to break, Rob. So
they are for me, too. Every time I hear somebody say it, it sounds like a joke to me. I'm like, senator just doesn't fit with 7 years as a representative.
Wait, time out. And have you actually, I can't recall the answer to this.
No, I think last time I was here, it was in part of the process.
No, but I mean, have you actually been in session as a state senator?
No, so veto session is coming up end of October, beginning of November. So we'll be down there doing that, and that will be the first time I'm actually in session as a senator.
I got you. All right, veto session. We're going to get into that. Lots to talk about with Rob Martwick. He says he can talk about you want to talk about the debates, Ben? I'll talk about the debates. You want to talk about veto session? I'll talk about veto session. You want to talk about Lori Lightfoot's appearance in Jefferson Park? That's his home territory. I'll talk about that. You want to talk about the Chicago Bears? I'll talk about that as well. We probably won't talk about the Chicago Bears. You got an update for me, D?
Better not talk about the Chicago Bears. We're a political show, all
not
right?
a sports show.
All right, we're going to keep talking about the debate, but mainly we're going to be talking about former Mayor Rahm Emanuel's performance on ABC last night. He was on the pre-debate, halftime of the debate, the post-debate. We've made it to the post-debate portion of our clips that we're going to play here. Rahm got to speak with a few of the candidates. We haven't heard him speak to Mayor Pete. I believe we haven't heard that yet. So let's hear Mayor Rahm talking with Mayor Pete. Ben loves both of these people.
Mayor Pete, let me ask you a question. I've done this when I've run for office. You always meet one person who tells you something and makes you think again and rethink what you used to have as a position, whether it's on any policy. Who along this campaign trail, any part, doesn't have to be Iowa, New Hampshire, you've met and they've told you something so powerful about their own experiences that makes you rethink a certain policy, whether it's on healthcare or a way you've approached a subject or a background. That story or that argument, mainly a story, changes the way you think of something. Have you met that person yet?
It's not about you. The great thing about campaigning is every day you meet different kinds of people.
You lose 20 pounds also while you do it. That's another great thing.
I'm actually losing weight because most of my meals are in vehicles now instead of sitting at a table. But you meet people who challenge your ideas all the time. That's the beauty of it. But the main thing is,
that's it.
All right, that's enough. Go ahead.
Can we get Rahm on the Ben Joravsky show so he can learn how to ask a question?
Yeah,
that was horrible.
I doubt we'll ever get Rahm on the Ben Joravsky show. I don't think he's ever sat down for an interview with me since 2002. How about that, Rob Martwick? Yeah,
that's a streak.
That was a long time ago. Just general reactions to the debate. I know you're a political junkie. You must have watched it.
Yeah, I liked it. I think it was like a good next step in the process. So I wasn't blown away by anything in the debate. There was nothing that made me go, whoa, that's changing everything. And I think that the polls today probably indicate that it's not changing much. But it was a nice step, whittling the field down to 10, letting them all get a chance to kind of show who they are so that voters will start to gravitate towards one or the other. Again, it wasn't like there were no watershed moments for me in the debate as I watched it. It helps me hone down who I'd like to see start rising out of the pack, because I think that they will make the best contrast to President Trump. But we'll see.
Now, who is that person?
So me personally, I think that the best contrast, and when I say I look forward, and this is purely political, it has nothing to do with policy, purely political, I say, who do I want to put before the American public who's going to stand toe-to-toe with him in a debate and is going to provide the greatest contrast? And to me, and succeed. And to me, I think that's Cory Booker. I really do. I think he's young. I think he's dynamic. I think he's whip smart. I think he comes from such a different background and yet so close, right? Like right across the river.
Yeah.
But such a whole different world. Mm-hmm. And,
Across the river, you mean across the river from New York City? Is that
that's
what you're
right.
Okay,
right. And just such have led different lives. And I look at him and I say to myself, we look at the results from Barack Obama winning and Hillary losing, and we know that young people and minorities stayed home in 2016. And we need someone who's going to bring out young people and minorities. We need to finish that equation to win, to victory. And I just look at that and I say, listen, if Joe's our candidate, I'm behind Joe, 100%. When I was at the Democratic chairman's brunch down in Springfield, they were handing out buttons that said Democrat for president. And that's where I'm on. I'm on that party. I'm for that, right?
Can I get one of those buttons?
Absolutely. I got an extra one for you. I'll bring it next time. So Democrat for president. And so I'm fine with Joe. I think it'd be great. But I think Booker would make such a great contrast that people would make that choice. And I think he will inspire young people. I think he will inspire minorities because of his story. And I think that's what we need to drive to the polls to ensure. Because to me, beating Trump is so much bigger than any one policy position or just about our party versus their party. I think he really, as an individual, poses a real threat to our democracy. I think this race is so important, and so politically, I'm starting to hone in who's going to be the best. Right now, he's off the charts on the polls, but I hope yesterday's performance brings him up a little bit.
You made a reference to a poll. I've been in this room all day pretty much, so I've been cut off from reality, other than the reality of this room. Have there been polls subsequent to the debate?
I was looking online. I didn't think I saw anything updated prior to it, but I just don't anticipate that.
And why don't you put Kamala in that category? Many of the things that you listed as attributes for Cory Booker could be applied to Kamala Harris.
I do. I like her. It's just, and in this, there's no science to this at all. I just feel, I'm a big believer in that voters, by and large, they don't vote on logic, they vote on emotion. And I believe that Cory Booker does a better job when he speaks of striking emotion in the listener. And that's a quality I want. Kamala last night was trying to do that. She's been very flat up to this point. So yeah, she draws a similar contrast as Cory Booker, a younger minority, but she doesn't inspire that emotion. I'll never forget the hearing for the judge, the Supreme Court judge.
Kavanaugh,
thank you. And I'll never forget the Republican who was presiding, accusing Cory Booker of
probably, who was the head of the Judiciary Committee? Is it Grassley? I want to say, but
yeah. And someone accused him of something that was illegal, and he said, "Go, take me right now." Right. And in that moment, I really said to myself, I mean, he has the ability to seize on those moments where somebody says something saying, aha, and he can turn that around and say, you got me? Oh, I'm going to turn the tables on you. I've got you right where I want you. And to me, I think that debate skill would really play well in a contrast with Trump. So
now I'm going to ask you this, and take into consideration when I ask you this question, your experience as a Chicago politician. You've seen a lot of mayors in the city of Chicago, including one, Richard M. Daley. A lot of people are making fun of Joe Biden since the debate because his rambling answer to, I forget what the even question was. You got a bit of D you want to play?
Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone, make sure the kids hear words.
All right, I listened to that last night, and then I read it, transcript of it, which it's really interesting to read. Rob Martwick, to read the transcript. It's even better, the transcript somehow. And I just thought Richard M. Daley.
Yeah.
Richard M. Daley would start rambling. You didn't know where he was going, and the citizens of Chicago loved him. So everybody's making fun of Joe Biden. My attitude as a Chicago resident and voter who's lived through the Daley years, I think he resonates with voters. They, in my humble opinion, don't seem to object to people who are borderline, I don't want to say the word senile, but they're not always speaking in a coherent, logical way. What's your reaction?
Rahm didn't speak in a logical, coherent way. We just heard that in his question. And I mean, I was at plenty of speeches where he gave speeches, and you're like, what is he talking about? And look, he's a smart guy. It's just his public speaking skills for someone of his position.
Wait, who's a smart guy, Rahm or Daley? Which one were you alluding? I didn't know the pronoun there.
I was actually talking about Rahm in the moment. Right. I think they're both smart guys, but But obviously, public speaking was neither of their fortes. You're right; it's not something that Chicago voters might demand. They like that sincerity that Uncle Joe provides. But again, I'm looking at the bigger picture, which is how do we drive out the turnout that we need in order to win this election nationwide, and that's bringing out youth and minority. And Bernie did a great job, which is why I almost won that primary, because he inspired youth, and he still does. But I gotta think at 78, he's kind of losing that ability to drive that youth out. And right now it's who they know. I'm hoping between now as the debates come down that, again, one of these people, is it a newly revamped Kamala that's a little bit more passionate? Is it a Cory Booker? Is it a Mayor Pete? I would like to see someone young that minorities identify with. Heck, I mean, he's not my first choice, but again, Beto, what a great moment last night when he spoke about guns. He's like not afraid to throw the gauntlet down, and so I give him credit. I don't know if there's more behind that or not yet, but he's putting a good front out.
The complete opposite take that you have on how to win this election was opined by Mayor Rahm. Dee, you got that Mayor Rahm bit where he gives his thoughts on the best way for Democrats to defeat Donald Trump? You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, I got to look for it.
All right. Anyway, we'll play that later, because everything you just said, Rob Martwick, was the opposite of Rahm's advice.
Really?
Yeah, so... thank God Rahm is not in charge of the Democratic Party. That's all I got to say on that. He's a pundit. It's okay, D. You don't have to find it. We're definitely going to need it for Samina and Leticia when they come in. We're going to be talking about the debates. All right, let's move away from the debates. Let's get into what's going on locally. I don't know which one to start with. I guess we'll start with Springfield. You said there's a veto session coming up. Rob, help people understand what exactly a veto session means in terms of the new rules and regulations on voting.
Well, it's so the veto session is designed, so the regular session is January through May 31st. We pass all the bills. They go to the governor's desk. He reviews them and then does what a governor's supposed to do. He either signs them and they become law, or he vetoes them. And in Illinois, he can veto them in part or in whole. He can amend them. He can line item them. And so any action that he takes that is not just signing the bill, then the bill comes back to the General Assembly, where they either have to approve what he did or reject what he did. Mm-hmm. And, then you can override his veto if necessary. Obviously, during Rauner's administration, the veto sessions were quite lively. Governor Pritzker has not vetoed a whole lot of bills. He worked with us, and we've got a lot of stuff signed. There are a few things. I don't imagine veto session will be terribly long. But in addition to addressing the vetoes, you can bring up new legislation. They have different voting requirements depending on the effective dates. If you want something effective immediately, you can't just pass it with a minority or just a simple majority of the vote. You have to pass it with super majorities. But it inevitably, there's always new things. So we just passed a big capital bill. What is a potential? A potential is that there's some sort of appropriation bill. You're going to raise $45 billion of capital? Can't spend it until you tell people exactly how. So there may be some appropriations bills that start to say, here's how we're going to spend some of this money. In specific, we passed one, but we will continue to add specifics to that as we come up with the projects that we actually identify. Other things that are likely to come up, we've heard much about the gaming expansion bill, how we might need something to address, to fine-tune, because maybe things aren't going as smoothly as we had hoped. And that's a normal part of the process. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. You lay out a bill that says this is what we think is the best, and then when things aren't great, you come back and you fine-tune them. Same thing with cannabis. We're looking like there's going to have to be some sort of trailer legislation to cannabis. Again, fine-tuning these big, huge pieces of law that we passed so that they can actually be implemented.
All right, now you talk about an appropriation. Does that require a super? When you say supermajority, what percentages or what number of votes do you need when you say supermajority?
So in the House, in order to pass a bill, you need 60 votes. If you need a supermajority, you need 71 votes to pass it. So we have 74 Democrats. So that means passing things with a supermajority is easier than it would be if we didn't have 74 Democrats. But again, we only have 74 Democrats because we have a really big tent and we welcome everyone. So there's pretty disparate views in our party. So getting to 71 is never quite as easy as it seems. So.
Yeah. All right. So that now, when you get to appropriations, do you need a supermajority to appropriate the money right now in the veto session?
No, because these are things. I mean, unless it's something that has to get done immediately. Usually, it's the kind of thing where if the effective date lags for 6 months, then you can just pass it with a simple majority. And appropriation bills generally are not very controversial. It's just basically nuts and bolts of saying, here's where we're going to spend the money.
All right. And one of the things that needs to be fine-tuned that we've learned lately, since the last time you've been on the show anyway, has to do with the gaming bill. Mayor Lori Lightfoot gave a speech, and she said this in comments to the press as well, that the formula that was laid out to distribute the winnings that the casino in Chicago would bring in is not enough to induce a investor to come into Chicago and operate a casino. You got to change the law, she says, so that the investor can make more money. That's effectively what she's saying. She doesn't literally come out and say it that way.
Right.
So that obviously would be one of the what you call fine tuning. Would you need a supermajority to fine tune the gaming bill if you were going to do it right now in the veto session?
I think so. If we want an immediate effective date so they can get on with this as soon as possible, I think then we would need a supermajority, which, on that sort of fine-tuning bill, it's not typically too difficult to get there. The question is going to be, so much work goes into these bills. Unfortunately, with the gaming bill, maybe not as much was as public as it should have been, and there's good reason for that. Not that I agree with it. Like, I believe that the wheels of democracy are messy, but they're supposed to be. Sometimes, in the sake of trying to pass something, we kind of keep the public out of things, and so that I think that's what happened there. They were trying to land the plane, so they didn't have as much public discussion as possible. And so I think that this is going to be fine-tuning that, but I think that the actual fine-tuning will go easier than passage of the bill. So
I'm all over the map on this one, Rob. I think we may have talked about this the last time on the show. On the one hand, I realize the city of Chicago needs money to pay its pension obligations. The gaming bill, if it creates a casino, those monies would be directed right into the police and fire pensions, which are underfunded. So it's something we need to. On the other hand, when they talk about fine-tuning this bill, it means more money for people who operate the casinos, less money for the police and fire pensions. So what's your position on all this?
Well, I mean, you've got to find the sweet spot, right? I mean, no one is going to run a business at a loss. They have to run a business at a profit, and then I'm sure they calculate out what that is. Certainly, we want to attract people. So I don't know what the answer is, but I do want them to find that sweet spot and get it done, because the Chicago pension funds are really at critical stage. They're at a critical stage. The police and fire are actually stable, although woefully underfunded. They're actually stable. It's the municipal fund, which is the largest fund in the city. I believe it's about 45% of the city employees, not including teachers. They have their own pension fund. But they are on the brink of insolvency, and they are on a rapid descent towards insolvency. Even if we make the payments as required by law, so when Mayor Lightfoot's administration says we're $832 million short, that anticipates paying the required payment. But the required payment is not enough. Just making the required payment will almost certainly ensure insolvency, which will cause massive property tax increases when we have to pay it. So we have to find a way to get the money into the funds and stabilize them, and then slowly start building the balances back
When you
up.
said the police and fire, but I wrote this down really hastily, I can't even read my writing. When you said the police and fire is stable but woefully underfunded, what did you mean by that?
So there's two ways of looking at pensions, and the most common way is what's their funded liability. Police and fire are roughly 20% funded. That is the barometer that most people look at. But there's another way of looking at it too, and that is the rate at which the fund must sell off assets to meet its current obligations. And what I mean is you got to send checks to the retirees, right? And so police and fire are woefully underfunded at 20%, but at least now they're on a payment schedule where we're putting in enough money to cover both an investment into the future and the benefits that we have to pay out to the employees. So they have to burn very little assets. The municipal fund, on the other hand, when we gave the ramp to police and fire, it was a very steep ramp to get them up to that actuarially required payment. The municipal fund is on a long, flat ramp that is year after year underfunding. And so they are selling off assets at a rate higher than any other major pension fund in the United States. They're burning 9% of their assets per year to pay their obligations, which is why they're probably about 3 years away from complete, because they're only 24% funded. And they're just blowing through their assets at an astronomical rate. And at some point, that level will get so low that no influx of cash will save.
When you say assets, what do you mean? Like their stock holdings? Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
by
they have to actually sell their investments in order to get money out. And so it's a really, really bad situation in the municipal.
It's like those old Russian families back in the aristocratic times have to sell the mansion in order to buy food to eat. Hold on, I have to. I'm going to drink some alcohol right here.
Yeah.
Utterly depressing. Utterly depressing conversation about the future of the city of Chicago. All right.
Yeah. And so that $832 million, if we were to actually pay what we need to pay into the municipal fund, like we are with police and fire, we would need probably another $250 million.
All right. So please explain to me something. We have these obligations that have to be met. We can no longer say we're going to cut the pensions. Mayor Rahm tried that. It didn't work. The state Supreme Court ruled against him. He wasted I don't know how many years on that strategy, something he neglects to mention when he's interviewing presidential candidates on ABC. And so that strategy doesn't work, so we need money. And my good friends from the progressive community have come up with a bunch of proposals, progressive taxes, everything from a commuter tax, a head tax, LaSalle Street tax, and almost every single one of these taxes, the powers that be in the city of Chicago tell us it's not going to happen. You can't do it. Forget about it. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your breath. Please, Rob Martwick, explain to me, if we can't tax the wealthiest people who can afford to pay the taxes the most, our alternative?
Well, the alternative is really ugly, and it's something that I've been fighting against for a long time. So the alternative is these funds slide into insolvency. And when they do, understand, like I said, when you get past the point of no return, there's no influx of cash that will save you. And so that means every year, instead of making an investment into the future that you expect to grow, you're making no investment. You're just paying what you need to pay. That's going to cause massive property taxes, 2, 3, 4 times increase in your property tax, okay? When that happens, the screaming and the wailing and the gnashing of teeth, and rightly so, from taxpayers will be overwhelming. And so the city will be faced with only one choice, and that is seeking permission to enter municipal bankruptcy. If they get that, if the legislature gives that to them, right, then what they would do is they would declare bankruptcy. And the ultimate bottom line here is that these pensioners would get pennies on the dollar. Right? So maybe 30, maybe 40 cents on the dollar if they're lucky. And that would still be coupled with a tax increase, maybe not as massive as otherwise. But those people, if you live in the city of Chicago, they live in your communities. They are your neighbors. They shop at your stores, and they eat at your restaurants, and they drink at your local taverns, and they are going to get wiped out. And they're not going to shop at your stores. They're not going to eat at your restaurants. And they're probably going to sell their homes, which is going to cause a massive drop in property tax values. And so if you're like me, where the vast majority of your investments are in your home, well, I mean, this is a bad, bad, bad scenario. Declaring bankruptcy, we should avoid that at all costs, and it will have this enormous rippling effect across the economy. The wealthiest, they'll survive it. But the rest of us from the middle class on down, it is going to be brutal. We're going to take it right on the chin. And so that's the only alternative. So when people say we can't raise the revenues to it, understand that the alternative is just as devastating with rippling effects across the whole economy. Everyone will suffer, but especially us. And so I think we've got to put all of those options on the table in terms of revenue, and we have to find a way. We got to make a soup of revenues that allows our business community to thrive, but does not force middle class and poor people out of the city. So we can't just, every revenue measure that we've done over the last 20 years falls squarely on the backs of the people that can't afford to pay. So we do have to find some progressive forms of revenue, but we have got to stabilize those pension funds. Not doing it is a catastrophic event if we don't do it.
Well, I can tell you right now, I agree with what you just said. And as I say this, not just as a person who observes city finances and city behavior, but as a person who pays the property tax. And I can tell you how far mine has gone up relative to my income, which is not done as well as my property tax bill. So I'm in the same boat with a lot of Chicagoans when I say this. And yet, again, I've never seen any, definitely over the last 6 years, any systematic movement by the leaders of our city for a more progressive form of taxation that could solve these problems by taxing people who could afford it. I'm not sure I even see that right now. Give me some hope for optimism on this front, Rob. Are you seeing any movement in this direction from your perch as a state senator?
Well, of course I am, because I was the chief sponsor of the resolution that will create a fair tax, a progressive income tax in the state of Illinois. So it's something that I've been working on, and I feel like we are close to getting it. And I hope it doesn't get derailed by middle-class people who feel overtaxed or don't vote for it, because it's like, no, this is going to give you some relief. So there are options. There are things we can do with property taxes, where I did a bill a couple years ago that raised homeowners exemptions. That creates progressivity in our property tax system, because the higher, everyone gets the same dollar value reduction. So the guy living in a $4 million home in Lincoln Park gets $250 off his bill. The guy living in a $250,000 home in Jefferson Park gets $250 off his bill. So it makes the system more progressive. So we can make some shifts to make the system work a little bit better. Everything's got to be on the table, and we got to get to work, because we're running out of time. It's ticking. It is ticking.
So speaking of getting to work, there was a town hall on the budget in your neck of the woods, Jefferson Park. You just alluded to it, at the Copernicus Center last week. I was unable to go. I was recovering from my little procedure here on my nose, so I was unable to go. I wanted to go. What's your report? You were our reporter on the scene. What was your sense of what Lori Lightfoot's thinking of based on what you heard at that meeting?
Well, the answer is I have no idea what she's thinking of. So I'm glad that she held it. I think it's great for public officials to go out and interact with their constituents and hear their concerns. However, there was no presentation whatsoever about even any options that they're considering to address the problem. What they did was they gave a 15-minute, I wouldn't even call it Budget 101. I would say, an overview of the Chicago budget process. Here's where we get our money from. Here's how much we raise in property taxes. Here's where it's spent. We did a survey. This is the results of the survey. And hey, everyone thinks we should spend it according to the percentages that we're spending it, right? And it's like, okay, now it's your turn. What do you guys want to have to say? And it's like, so they didn't actually propose anything. She's got a real big problem. I imagine she is working very, very hard. Her staff is very hard at work trying to figure out what this solution is going to be, who she's going to ask for help. We expect that she will come to Springfield and ask for some help. As of yet, there's been no communication, so we really don't know. I was sitting with a whole bunch of aldermen and legislators at that town hall, and like I said, there were no answers. She listened to people's concerns. And as you can imagine, it was the general public. So there was a parade of people who stood at the mic and said, don't cut pensions. And the next person said, get rid of pensions. And one person said, stop raising taxes. And the next person said, stop cutting services. Yeah. And so, it was like, I mean, it's a good thing for her to do. She's new. And I think she should continue to do it. She should hear from her constituents. So I applaud her for that. But I hope that at these future town halls, they start to roll out some, hey, here's some ideas. You can't really get feedback from your constituents if they have no idea what the options are on the table. Mm-hmm. Tell them what the menu of ideas are, and then let them weigh in on what they think it should be. But just a random, what do you think, doesn't really get us anywhere.
Did you, by the way, speak at the...
I did not. No elected officials did. It was Lori's budget team, the mayor's budget team. She had a moderator, and she spoke.
Well, as a longtime observer of these things, as a former member of the state, former state legislator, and now you're a state senator, how would you compare Lori, I should say, with Mayor Rahm in terms of their diplomacy in dealing with state reps and state senators?
It's hard for me to judge her. I mean, I can compare her early, but there's so much more of her term to have. So, you know, she did come down to Springfield right away and introduced herself and said hello to everybody. That's a good first step. Tonight she's holding a legislative reception for legislators. And again, kind of hoping maybe she'll tell us a little bit about what she's thinking about, what she's going to need from us. But, you know, we haven't had that personal one-on-one contact yet. But again, it's a big job. It's a big city. She's got big problems. She's got a lot of work on her plate. I hope it comes in time. With Ram, Ram spoke to a handful of his favorite legislators, and he spoke to leadership, and that was it. He really didn't speak to the rest of us. He did hold these legislative receptions. They were very nice, but there was not a whole lot of communication.
Did he have the legislative receptions as well?
He did once a year. Invite all the legislators.
Where would they hold them?
Navy Pier was popular, and there was one up on, and I'm going to forget the name of it. It's a restaurant right up on the lake up north a little bit. It's a former Park District site, I think, and, you know, real pretty places.
Hors d'oeuvres,
cocktail, and then the mayor would come around and shake a few hands and say a few words. So.
Mayor Ron, what a charming and lovable guy, huh? ABC TV has really picked the winner there. Did you find that thing, D, by any chance? I would love to play it.
What is he talking about again?
This is Mayor Rahm, his advice. It was at, I don't know if it was pre or post. I think it may have been pre. He was talking about the need to drive out a vote. You don't have to worry about energizing the base. The base will already be energized. What matters is winning over Trump voters.
Well, fingers crossed. I hope this is it.
All right.
Because what actually is happening, like 10 people left on stage. This is like Agatha Christie's novel, and then there were none. I mean, you're just going to thin out. And Donald Trump, whether you're a progressive, moderate, in the end of the day, we're going to have a nominee, and the most important thing we're going to be is about beating Donald Trump. That's our number one, number two, number three goal for this election. And the whole question now is, who do we think best positions not only to beat Donald Trump, but then advance the Democratic agenda? And there's really only shades of gray. There's no disagreement about what the goals are. It's how to get there.
All right, that's not the one, but it doesn't matter. That one kind of obvious.
You know, and again, I didn't hear this. I missed Ram on ABC. I was watching on YouTube. But the idea that we have to win over Trump voters, if that's really his idea, I mean, I get what he's saying is never mind the base. I mean, that's like Joe is winning because he's got the base. The question is if 27% or 30% wins you the primary, can you get all the rest of those people that you didn't get to come to your aid, and then all those people that don't vote in a Democratic primary to come out? I don't think it's about winning over Trump voters. You're never going to win over Trump voters. It's about winning the people, the moderates. It's about winning, you know, even Republicans who are like, I can't vote for this guy anymore.
Well, to fair to Rahm, what I think he was saying, I'm doing off the memory here, is that there were people who voted for Obama, and then they turned around and somehow or other, and I don't know how this ever happened, they ended up voting for Trump. Now you want to get them to vote for whoever the Democrat is. So he's saying that your base is your base. Yeah. You got to get those swing voters, and that's the key. Your base is going to vote no matter what, and that's his attitude toward liberals and lefties and progressives everywhere. You shut up and get in line. You have no choice.
I know.
We learned in 2016, hey, they got a choice. They don't have to vote.
That's right, and that's exactly right. I was just thinking, like, he's thinking about a small pool, right? How do you get the people that are in this small pool? I say, let's get a bigger pool. Let's get those people back out and vote. New voters, young people, immigrants, minorities. When they come out and vote, they vote Democrat. They stayed home in 2016. You know, they came out in 12. They stayed home in 16. Let's get them back out in 20.
I agree. Great minds think alike on that subject. Anyway, Rob Martwick and I think alike. Rob, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it. We'll get you back. So when's the veto session over?
I got to look exactly, but I think I want to say it's last week of October and first week of November.
Okay.
Or so we typically have a week, we have a week off, and then we have another week. And it's October, November. So the only thing is there is speculation that if we don't tackle some of these bigger trailer bill items, that because there's not a whole lot of work to do because he didn't veto many bills, we may have a very short
trailer bill items. You've explained trailer bills in the past. One more time, help people out. What is a trailer bill?
It's a fix. It's a bill you passed, and you come in and you say, "Oh, well, we got that wrong, and we got this wrong. So let's run a bill that just reprints that whole bill, and you take a pencil and you cross off the things that were bad, and you write in the things that are good, and then you fine tune that.
And you need a supermajority to pass a trailer bill
if it's effective immediately.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you may hold off to effect, not to effect. You could avoid the supermajority if you write the bill so it doesn't take effect until next year.
Right.
Man, I too could be Michael Joseph Madigan. It just takes a little prep, all right? You know, Madigan knows all this stuff, Rob. You just get supermajorities, trailer bills. He sees it in his sleep. Rob Martwick is my guest, state senator from the northwest side of Chicago. Thank you very much, Rob. I appreciate you coming in. Also want to thank Vaughn, Bryant, and Frank Perez. They're here earlier in the day. And, of course, Rummana, Hussain. We got a busy day today. We got 2 bonuses to do, and the next live one will be at 4:45 or thereabouts.
Yeah, everybody join us live, Facebook Live at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, or the YouTube channel. If you're watching right now, just keep it right here, 4:45. We'll be doing it.
Yeah, Leticia Wallace, Rob Martwick's old friend, will be in the studio with Samina Mustafa. They'll be breaking down the debate, analyzing everything from what Joe Biden said to what Cory Booker said to what Elizabeth Warren said, et cetera. It should be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to that.
That's today?
Yeah, we're going to do that in approximately an hour. Leticia Wallace will
Leticia's the best.
She is awesome.
You give her all my love.
I will.
She's a great woman.
She'll be sitting right where you're sitting, and
Fantastic.
Samina will be sitting there as well.
You got to hear this. You didn't see the Cory Booker Rahm moment?
Oh, yes.
I did not.
Oh, man, you're going to love this.
This is for Rob Martwick.
This is your boy. All right, so what happened is Cory Booker was hugging some of the panelists, a lady who's a senator who I can't remember her name offhand, but Cory Booker gave her a hug, and then came the moment for Rahm to get a hug. Oh, boy. Let me make sure I got the right one here. All right. Wait, okay. Nope, it's clip 7. All right, here we go.
Senator Booker, how you doing?
No hugs for
Rahm
the mayor, for Rahm Emanuel. No hugs for Rahm.
Nothing? Matt Dowd, no love either. It's okay, Matt.
You should have gotten a hug. That was an oversight. Take a handshake.
Senator Booker,
I'm okay without a hug.
You got a hug?
Yeah, that's fine by me.
You have that mayoral solidarity.
You were the one that said it, so that's fine.
Oh, okay.
Nobody likes Rahm.
Nobody
likes Rahm. I don't want to hug him. Anyway, plenty of hugs here, Rahm, when you come on the Ben Joravsky Show. Anyway, thank you very much, Rob Martwick. And Dr. D did an outstanding job, as you always do. And, man, this guy was working like crazy today, Rob Martwick. He's getting all those clips ready, and we'll be playing a lot of those clips when Samina and Leticia come in. So, Dr. D, give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. Take care, everybody.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you download your favorite podcast downloaders. We live stream the show Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel, and now on Facebook. Speaking of, like we said, 4:45, we're going to be doing a post-debate special with Leticia Wallace and Samina Mustafa. Find out what happened at the debate if you haven't watched it yet. Join us, 4:45.
Senator Booker, how you doing?
No hugs for the mayor, for Rahm Emanuel. No hugs for Rahm.
Nothing? Matt Dowd, no love either. It's okay, Matt.
You should have gotten a hug. That was an oversight. Take a handshake.
I'm okay without a hug.
You got a hug?
Yeah, that's fine by me.
You have that mayoral solidarity.
You were the one that said it, so that's fine.